At 3 a.m. on an empty highway, Ryder Malone, a gruff biker with a reputation for trouble, pulled into a worn-down gas station just looking for coffee, but instead found a terrified teenage girl hiding behind a dumpster, shivering in the freezing night, her eyes red from crying, her voice barely steady enough to whisper that she needed help before they came back, and in that moment Ryder, who had spent years running from his own mistakes, felt something shift inside him as he realized that fate was giving him a chance to protect someone the way nobody had ever protected him. Before he could ask another question, a black SUV screeched into the parking lot and two men jumped out demanding the girl, claiming she belonged to them and shoving a folder of forged papers in Ryder's face, but he stood between them like a wall of steel, refusing to move, and when they threatened to call the police to accuse him of kidnapping, he slowly removed his gloves, cracked his knuckles, and told them plainly that they'd have to go through him first, something they clearly didn't want to risk. The men switched tactics instantly, offering to settle it for $10,000, thinking Ryder couldn't possibly pay, but he knew what they really meant. They were extorting him with the girl's safety, and although he hated himself for even considering giving criminals money, he saw the silent pleading in her trembling eyes and made a choice that surprised even him. He walked to his bike, opened a hidden compartment, pulled out a roll of emergency cash saved over years, and slammed the thick bundle into the man's chest with a growl telling them they'd never come near her again. As the SUV disappeared down the road, Ryder walked back to the girl who still hugged herself tightly as if afraid the world might swallow her whole, and he asked gently for her name. She whispered, "Lena," almost as if she wasn't used to being asked, and when he offered her his jacket, she hesitated before slowly taking it, the warmth surprising her, as though kindness was something foreign she didn't quite know how to receive anymore. Ryder brought Lena to a 24-hour diner where the pale yellow lights and the smell of frying pancakes slowly softened the tension in her face, and while she quietly picked at her food, she revealed pieces of her story, how she'd run away from a dangerous home, how she'd fallen into the hands of men who promised safety but treated her like property, and how she'd spent weeks searching for one chance to escape. Every word tightened Ryder's jaw, because the world had failed her in all the ways it had once failed him. When Lena finally asked why he helped her, Ryder stared into his cooling coffee and confessed that years ago he had lost his little sister to people who took advantage of vulnerable girls, and he had never forgiven himself for not being there. So when he saw Lena alone in that parking lot, frightened and desperate, he felt as though he was being given a second chance to do what he hadn't been able to do before, protect someone who deserved more than the cruelty she'd known. Determined not to let history repeat itself, Ryder took Lena to a trusted friend, a retired social worker who secretly ran a safe house for girls escaping dangerous situations. The small home smelled of lavender and warm bread, and Lena blinked in disbelief because it was the first place in years where no one yelled, threatened, or demanded anything of her. And for the first time she allowed herself to hope that maybe she wasn't doomed to live in fear forever. Days turned into weeks, and Ryder visited regularly, fixing broken furniture around the safe house, bringing books, teaching Lena how to ride a small training motorcycle in the yard, and talking to her about strength, boundaries, and the right to rebuild her life. Lena absorbed every lesson like sunlight after a long winter, slowly shedding the tension and exhaustion she'd carried for so long, and even beginning to laugh, a sound Ryder had almost forgotten existed in his world. Months later, Lena stood in the safe house's tiny garden holding a certificate from the local community center showing she'd enrolled in classes, her hands no longer shaking, her smile no longer forced, and when she spotted Ryder rolling into the driveway on his bike, she ran to him with a confidence he barely recognized, thanking him not for the money he spent, nor the risks he took, but for believing she was worth saving when she herself couldn't see any value left inside her. Ryder rode away that evening beneath a sunset that painted the sky orange and gold, knowing he would always check in, always be part of her support system, but also knowing she no longer needed someone to stand between her and the world. She was strong enough to fight for her own future now, and as he accelerated down the open road, he felt something lift from his chest. A quiet understanding that sometimes changing someone else's life becomes the moment that finally changes your own.